a lot of negotiations that were occurring in the past, a few months, lasting from January. But the work really began last year when we were unable to pass meaningful legislation, and that resulted in multiple deaths, including Daunte Wright. What we have seen in the lack of accountability regarding Winston Smith and so many others like Dulal Eid and so many others. But yet this issue did not start with George Floyd, but it started with many, many others prior to the murder of George Floyd. Now we are embarking on the potential reopening of the Terrence Franklin case, and that also shows you the lack of accountability and transparency that we do have in policing here in the state of Minnesota. And to us, we have community leaders, activists, as well as, most importantly, impacted family to talk about what does this failure mean to us, and how we still have an opportunity today and tomorrow to actually add amendments that would embark on us actually having some meaningful, fundamental change to policing in the state of Minnesota. And I'd like to really add that this failure is unacceptable. We did not, George Floyd and Daunte Wright and so many others did not die in Colorado. They did not die in California. They did not die in Texas. They died right here in Minnesota. Yet we have other states that are passing meaningful legislation, but yet we are unable to do that here. So to start us off today, we're going to go ahead and start with the Executive Director of CARE Minnesota, Jaylani Hussein.
Jaylani Hussein, Executive Director of CARE Minnesota. We are here this morning at the Capitol learning this weekend that there was a deal made for public safety. We have looked at this deal and have had conversations with the governor, the speaker, and other members of the legislative body. And based on what we are able to gather so far, we believe that the current policy does not include any transformative police accountability laws that we have been advocating for nearly a year now. In fact, this bill would have made it for George Floyd if he resisted. If in any way George Floyd fought back and struck any of those officers in defense of his life, he would be serving longer sentence than what Derek Chauvin received for killing George Floyd for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. Today is a shameful day for the state of Minnesota, that the state that killed George Floyd is yet unable to pass police accountability. And we are here today to say that failure is not an option. We're asking the governor to veto this policy. We're asking for legislators who believe that Derek Chauvin and the likes of Derek Chauvin should be held accountable and removed from police departments all over this country and this state. We need them to stand up now. We know good police officers and good policing welcomes accountability. But unfortunately, this policy or this bill even excluded from the idea that white supremacists or police officers who would be part of white supremacist groups would not be part of police departments. It excluded almost every single meaningful legislation that we have asked for. Common sense, meaningful legislation. The reality is we knew that this past summer they were not willing to do any police accountability. We knew that this entire year, the debates and the discussions, many of the police accountability bills that we have proposed have not even hit the floor. And we know Senator Limmer and Senator Gazelka have absolutely standed on the side of Derek Chauvin. They want Derek Chauvin. They want more Derek Chauvins on our streets. They want people to be killed by police and held no accountability. The Senate Republicans have made their choice, and their choice is that Black lives do not matter in this state or anywhere else. The reality is we have seen this before. We have seen people just like us standing at a press conference talking about police accountability, talking about protecting Black lives. It happened in the South. It happened with the Bull Connors. It happened with those who the federal government even have to step in. For me, I don't even have hope in the state of Minnesota. I don't have hope in the Democratic Party or the Republican Party to hold police accountable. We're asking for President Biden and the federal government to bring on police accountability because this state is not serious. This state is not serious. They're acting as if they did not kill George Floyd. They're acting as if they did not see the unrest that happened after the killing of George Floyd. They're acting as if people are not dying. They're dying. Winston Smith was killed not even a few weeks ago. Dante Wright was killed right after, during the trial. Bilal Eid was killed right after George Floyd was killed, nearly 6 blocks away from where he was killed. And we still don't know answers for any of those cases. The state of Minnesota has blood on its hands, and for the longest time have protected police, and it's been on both sides, Democrats and Republicans, who continue to see that police, when they kill and harm black and brown bodies across the state, they do not care. We saw the swift actions by both bodies to protect human lives during the pandemic this year. We saw how quickly the governor and leaders spoke about this pandemic every single day, reminding us how they were working diligently to address it. But when it comes to the injustice in the state, when it comes to the history of what this state has done to the people of color, today the state of Minnesota leads in categories that it should never have led. Categories of worst achievement gap for people, for students of color, the worst economic opportunities, the worst housing divide. And that is happening everywhere. It's not a rural, urban divide. It's happening everywhere. And right now, it is brown and indigenous people who make Minnesota move. It is the hardworking people across the state who work in turkey plants, the hardworking people who work here in the urban communities, who are asking for Minnesotans, for white Minnesotans, to stand up. If you care about Black lives, stand up. The legislators have not heard from you. We brought 65,000 petitions. They don't care. We protested this past year almost every other weekend. We did everything we could. But the reality is the state of Minnesota is refusing to acknowledge that they have a problem. The problem of bad policing. We sent letters requesting the 3 agencies that represent police to make a statement on white supremacy. They have refused. Senator Gazelka stands with police officers who promote, are a part of white supremacy. That bill, that's a symbolic bill to the best of my knowledge. But even that bill couldn't even pass it in this deal that was struck. We're asking for the governor to step up. We're asking for Melissa Horman to step up, and we're asking for the state legislators to step up, and we're asking for the state of Minnesota and the people of this state who have put lawn signs outside their homes talking about they care about Black lives, and those businesses that put George Floyd's name out on their walls. If you care about George Floyd, if you care about the countless families that have been killed by police, and the countless families who have lost their loved one because of the discretion of police officers who are racist, put them into prison, we're asking for you to stand up now. This session cannot end without serious police accountability. And we see right now that this latest deal is a joke. This latest deal, it is Gazelka and Limmer. Warren Limmer and Gazelka should be happy because they got what they wanted. They are protecting police officers, not holding police officers accountable. And for the Democrats, shame on you for saying you stand with the community and bringing forth a resolution that does not include one meaningful legislation. The state of Minnesota needs to wake up, and we're asking for those who care about this issue to show up here tomorrow, which we believe will be when they will be discussing these bills, and to stay here and demand justice by any means necessary.
Next, I'd like to go ahead and invite the founder of Family Supporting Families, Tashira Garway.
I stand here as someone that works with many families that have lost their loved ones around Minnesota. I too lost my fiance and the father of my now 15-year-old son, Justin Tigan Jr. I stand here with a heavy heart. I stand here with a heart because I am tired. Paul Gazelka, the governor, all of those guys, we've met with time and time again, re-traumatizing ourselves. Our families re-traumatize ourselves, telling our stories. I explained how the St. Paul police beat my son's father to death, beat him to death, and threw his body, disposed of his body inside of a trash dumpster, August 19, 2009. We have mothers that explained how the police shot their children 49 to 52 times here in the state of Minnesota. Jamar Clark was murdered in front of a 10-year-old. The 10-year-old family had to take that child out of Minnesota because they were afraid of what would happen. I live my life in fear, afraid that they will come after me because I've had it happen. I've had the police sit outside my home. I've been followed with my 3-year-old in the car when they first murdered Justin. I was just followed about 2 weeks ago. There is no way that our families should have to live through something like this without police being held accountable for their actions. There is a difference between police reform bills and police accountability bills. We need these officers, we need human beings to be held accountable for their actions if they hurt another human being, no matter their title or the uniform that they wear. If people are not held accountable for their actions, the actions will continue no matter what. So there is no moving forward. There is no healing until accountability bills are passed for our families. We have asked, we have begged, we have pleaded, we have cried, we have done everything to ask for police accountability bills. And if you want to know what those bills are, then listen to us. We lost our loved ones. We know what needs to change. We are out here suffering. We are out here hurting. And it's over 470 of us in the last 20 years in the state of Minnesota alone. George Floyd is only the face that represents hundreds of murders here in the state of Minnesota that have been covered up by the police departments and the BCA and the county attorneys. And Derek Chauvin represents hundreds of killer cops that are still out there in our communities, that are roaming amongst us, and that are still on the forces. But Derek Chauvin did not get to where he got in the place of invincibility to kill a man in broad daylight as he urinated on himself and pleaded for his mother. He did not get to that place where he didn't care that he was being having footage on him, that he was being recorded. He did not care. Why? Because he was able to kill 3 or 4 people before he got to George Floyd with no accountability. And he represents many more officers. Half of the officers that are in the family's cases have been in prior cases. They have been in some of our same family's cases. This is the facts and the truth. And we understand that it is people like Warren Limmer and Paul Gazelka, privileged white men that live out in Royal Minnesota, that never experience what the inner city people are experiencing. Poor white people, Black, Indigenous, and minority people. We understand that they have not experienced these experiences. Because for the police, some people they do protect. And that's higher class, higher paid white people. But you have to understand that it is certain people that they are harming in the community. And that's Black, Indigenous, and minority people and poor people. And we have people like Warren Limmer and Paul Gazelka who are privileged white men making decisions for our inner cities. And that needs to stop. So we want police accountability bills passed. This is what the families are pleading for. And if you need to know what they are, then come to us. Come to our communities. Come talk to the community leaders. Come talk to our families that are out here suffering. Thank you.
Next, we'd like to have the President of Communities United Against Police Brutality, Michelle Gross.
Good morning. My name is Michelle Gross, M-I-C-H-E-L-L-E-G-R-O-S-S, and I'm the president of Communities United Against Police Brutality. You know, we're in a beautiful building. It's a lovely building. It's got many beautiful architectural features, but there are some ugly things that happen in this building. The legislature here plays a lot of very ugly, very nasty games. Throughout their negotiations on the budget bill, they have removed and stripped away almost all meaningful legislation that would address police accountability from the final package, while at the same time giving police officers plenty of everything that they wanted. So the proposed package gives the cops lots of money for body cameras, but doesn't require them to make the footage available to the families of people who are killed by police. The bill gives the cops $1 million for a violent crime enforcement task force, whatever that is, but doesn't include civilian oversight. The bill includes a special new act called the Matson-Strong Act that would ensure that if any of the bystanders in George Floyd's murder would have tried to stop the police, they would actually go to prison for a longer period of time than the sentence that Derek Chauvin got. But that same package does not include our bill to end the statute of limitations for wrongful death by police. So can you see the problem here? We've got a problem. That bill is so tilted, so out of balance, so in favor of police and so against the community that it is an absolute outrage. You know, they say that the legislation is done by the people who show up. We have been showing up. We have caused over 100,000 emails to be sent to legislators at the Minnesota legislature. We brought to the governor's office 65,000 signatures on petitions from people in outstate areas after he said to us, oh, we need outstate support. Then he said, we need corporate backing. So we brought forward 80 corporations to back our bills. That was not enough. They still think they can trade off the needs of the families, of the impacted families, for other kinds of things that they want. And that is an outrage. We have a problem in Minnesota. This is the epicenter of an international movement demanding an end to police violence. And yet we cannot get a single meaningful police accountability measure across the finish line. And this is in 2 sessions now. It is an outrage. This has to stop. Stop trading the needs of the community for what the cops want. Stop trading it for some other kind of bill that you want. It is time, in fact it's past time, that we have meaningful police accountability legislation that actually will change the situation that's going on here, that will actually bring police violence to an end. It is time that we pass meaningful police accountability legislation that will bring police violence to an end and create consequences for cops who engage in that conduct. Thank you.
Next we'd have Jonathan McCullough.
Hello, my name is Jonathan McClellan. I'm president of the Minnesota Justice Coalition. We are part of a collective of organizations that work with the families and community to draft and advance legislation here in St. Paul and in Washington, D.C. Once again, we have reached the peak of progress and hope for our state. And once again, the gatekeepers fail to do what is right, what is just, and what the people demand. While one side promotes white supremacy, the other side makes political calculations instead of being the voice of the people. We refuse to fall for the banana in the tailpipe. Like the slaveholders of the South in the founding of this country, the opposition to progress fights for unrighteousness. They argue for division. They promote their actions or lack thereof, a distorted reality that places one class of people over the other and fails to see the humanity in all that is sacred under God. They turn their back to the promise that all men are created equal and have been endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We are not asking for a handout. We want your boot off our neck. We want a fair shot. We want a level playing field, not a hill we have to climb and fight with one hand tied behind our back or a knee on our neck and a gun to our head or the head of our children. The Democratic governor and Democratic Speaker of the House and Speaker of the Senate slipped a provision in the package of bills that could have a person who stepped in to remove Derek Chauvin from the back of George Floyd, saving his life, up to 25 years in prison. More time than what Derek Chauvin got for murdering a black man on the street of 38th in Chicago and Minneapolis. And what do we get in return? Not one police accountability bill, not one piece of legislation that will remove the barrier that law enforcement runs and hides behind when they break the law, when they kill a human being. They care more about protecting police than they care about protecting the community. They care more about protecting Derek Chauvin than they care about protecting George Floyd. James Baldwin said, "I can't trust what you say because I see what you do." This is what they do. They give us crumbs while robbing Minnesotans to protect white supremacy. It's time to grow a backbone and fight like your life depends on it, like your child's life depends on it, like Dante Wright's life depended on it. And if they thumb their nose at you, then shut it down and hold your head up high knowing that you fought for justice, that you fought for the people, that you fought for our children, that you fought for our future. Because an injustice on one of us is an injustice on all of us. And it doesn't matter what color your skin is or how much money you have in the bank. What matters is our morals, our values, our humanity. Pass the statute of limitations on wrongful death, which removes the 3-year limitation to bring a court case. Pass the 48-hour bill known as Kobe's Law, allowing the families to view the body camera footage within 48 hours after a police critical incident. And if you're feeling really bold, pass qualified immunity. Thank you.
Next we'll have DJ with Twin Cities Justice for George.
My name is DJ Hooker. I help organize with TCC for J. And I want to say, I am here on behalf of myself. I'm here on behalf of my 400 plus kids over north. I am here for Dante Wright, for Delaw Eid, for Winston Smith, and for George Floyd. I'm here for the community. We have some of the worst redlining practices that have gone on in this state that we see have happened over North Minneapolis, where it used to be an old Jewish neighborhood and they benefited from redlining, and now it's become the hood. We have some of the worst gentrification in the nation that's happened, that's currently happening to North Minneapolis. We have some of the highest disparities in the nation for African Americans that you can see in our school systems with the literacy rate of whites versus blacks. You can also see with the state not allowing us to build generational wealth when we saw the destruction of the Rondo neighborhood. We have so much as a community that we have to suffer from historically and currently in Mississippi. But we also can't even feel safe in our own community and even our own home. Rest in peace to Queen Breonna Taylor. We have some of the quote-unquote highest profile police lynchings in the nation. Now we have the legislators playing games, not only with our tax dollars, but they're playing games with people's lives. This is absolutely disgusting. We are not asking for anything crazy. We are asking for common sense bills that will make us feel safer. We're asking to feel protected. We're asking to feel represented. Because when you're playing games like this, it shows us just like the cops, you're only protecting and serving white supremacy. All power to the people.
Next, we'd like to have the Community Advocacy Manager for CARE Minnesota, Zainab.
Everybody, my name is Zainab Mohammed. I'm the Advocacy Manager of CARE Minnesota.
Could you spell that, please?
ZAYNAB Mohammed MOHAMED. I think, like everybody here, I am disappointed, but not surprised at all. I stood here with many of these community advocates on January, the first day of session, asking and demanding for some accountability, for some justice, for some transparency. We brought forth over 12 bills. Out of those, 8 made it to the final round. No, 8 made it to the House floor and 4 made it to the final round. None of them have been passed. And if they were, it might be 2, and both of them are watered down bills. This is the year that George Floyd died here. And this is the single one year where police have become a conversation, and in changing the public safety of the state to ensure that Black lives in this state feel safe and feel heard and feel valued, especially by the Democratic Party, who run on these policies year after year after year. Yesterday, the Speaker of the House tweeted that they've come to a bipartisan agreement, which includes some sort of a reform. The Democratic Party has the executive power, they have the House. The only thing they don't have is the Senate. And they sat in closed-door rooms and they negotiated on behalf of what the Republicans want. And then they want to come back to Black people and say, we tried, the way we can do better. In a meeting last night, Speaker Hortman said, the way we can make change is making sure that we flip more seats. Let me remind you something. When we stepped in here or into meetings with them asking for these changes, it was the Democratic Party that asked us and told us that these bills would not make it. To me, standing here, I'm not surprised, because all year we've been fighting for just a little bit. We didn't even get the crumbs. Some people think we got the crumbs, we got nothing. They have Representative Thompson, who his own best friend and brother was killed by police in the state. Right? We've got a number of people who've been affected by this that are fighting for this and begging, and we have nothing. And so I think there's this idea that there can be some sort of an amendment change, that more can be done. If that doesn't happen, what's the option? We come back to next year and public safety will not be the conversation. There will be no budget negotiation. What is it that's gonna take people and legislators and lawmakers, Republicans and Democrats, to move and realize that Black lives in this state matter? Thank you.
Next, we'll go ahead and take, before we take questions, we'll have Representative John Thompson go up.
Oh, man. I stood here in 2016 in this building in a public safety hearing, but it was a bill proposed by Representative Nick Zerwas at the time. It was the anti-protest bill, and I promised that I'd be in this suit and a part of this body in 2016. I made good on my promise. I thought things would change. I thought things would change as I became a legislator. You know, it's 2021 now. Here we are, hundreds of dead men later, not only by the hands of police, but by violence in our community, because they use this violence in our community as another tool to demonize us. They're profiting off of our pain. Hundreds of Minnesotans demanded significant police accountability measures to prevent future deaths of Black men here in this state. These police accountability measures have been blocked by our Senate Republicans, none who represent the areas that we live in. Because I find it ironic and it warms my heart that they only care about Minneapolis when it comes to violence. The Posse Caucus and the DFL legislators put forth dozens of accountability measures put together by this coalition and a lot of other people here in our state. I mean, it would ensure that we were safer in our communities. There's no meaningful accountability measures in this public safety bill. The governor governor has the authority to influence the rule-making process on this. He has to stand with the average Minnesota who wants safety throughout this state. These common sense police accountability measures that are supported by the majority of Minnesotans here. Listen, the status quo is more dangerous than any gang in this state. The status quo. Let me just talk about public safety, y'all. Investments in education would help public safety. Investments in housing would help public safety. Investment in our communities would help public safety. The only thing we're getting here is more police. That's all we're getting. We're not getting investment. Look at every package. Every package. I mean, from the ag finance package to the doggone, they were going to shut this state down because of a refinery bill. They were going to shut this state down. The Senate said if we don't pass this refinery thing, we're going to shut it down. Here we are complaining about lives, and we're negotiating our lives right here in this state. And they're playing games with our lives. Because what they'll do is say, well, look at the spike in gun violence. Well, look at the underinvestments. We have the worst in the nation education gaps in this state. They're sizing our young men up for jumpsuits at the age of 6 years old in our public schools, and I'm not here to tell y'all anything other than the truth. Systemic racism exists in this doggone building right here. I have one of my colleagues, Garofalo, who loves to talk about how crime is in our community. Dakota, he works in Dakota County. You talk about crime in our community, right? You help create the crime in my community when you vote no against the education bill. You help create the crime in my community when you vote no against the housing. You help create the crime in my community when you underinvest in everything that matters to us. Somebody said to me, well, we got $5 million for community public safety. That's 5 barbecues across this state, a couple of jumpy houses, some hot dogs. The public is not safe. Police officers don't make this state more safer, man. Somebody told me that white supremacists don't exist in our police departments here in this state. I'm here to tell you that if it quacks like a duck, it has a beak like a duck, and feet like a duck, it's probably a duck. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. This is an ideal job for a man who does not like black men. People get mad at my words. I get mad at your actions. I get mad at your actions because you'll show up today with 5,000 state troopers surrounding this place for us. We have no weapons. We just have our words. I'm tired of looking like the anti-police legislator. I'm not anti-police. Again, I'm anti-bullshit. I know what I'm talking about, man. And when my community shows up and says, this is what we need, believe us. You don't live in our community. You have a man right here fighting for gun violence in our community while you sit here and play politics. Oh, there's so much violence, we need more police. No, we need more resources. There's millions of dollars coming here from the federal government, right? Not to help us. There's millions of dollars coming here for more judges. There's millions of dollars coming here for more prosecutors, more police officers, more federal agents. I didn't see anything about stopping the disparities that we have in this state. I didn't see anything. So what you're telling me is the only thing that black people need in their communities is more policing. This is why people don't trust the police. I know I'm going over my time, but I'm sick and tired of standing at this podium because tomorrow there'll be another dead black man. Tomorrow there'll be another dead child in North Minneapolis. And these people will sit up here and play politics with our lives. Do Black Lives Matter? Governor, you have the power to do something. And all I've been getting from your office is lip service. I mean that. All we've been getting from the governor's office is lip service. There was no police accountability measures in this bill, and you have the authority to veto this bill and say no. Show some testicular fortitude. And I remember asking Governor Walsh the first day he said he was running for office, what are you going to do for black people? You failed our community, Governor. You failed our community. We don't need a press conference from you, Governor. We need a leader. Thank you.
I'll go ahead and questions.
of the traffic stop violation, the release of body camera video to families. What is, I guess, if you can pick number one thing that is not there that you think is the most detrimental to not be in there?
There's no one. These bills were designed to be the least. We know Minnesota is a racist state. We didn't want to bring something that is maybe we can think about in the next 2 or 3 years. We just wanted to start somewhere. And these bills are basic common sense, so we need all of them. They all address different angles of the issue. And that is why we have it. We also have other bills that we want to bring forth, but these are not even getting any attention. So we're not picking and choosing which bills we want. We want all of these bills, and that's why we're standing here.
Our families really need the statute of limitation for wrongful death bill passed. Right now, there is a 3-year limit on when families can bring forward their cases. In that 3 years, families are mourning. Families are in distraught when we have our loved ones brutally murdered by police here in Minnesota. Secondly, our families have experienced harassment. We have been taunted by the police once they murder our loved ones in a heinous way. The families, some of the families are afraid or have been afraid to come forward with their cases. In addition to mourning, in addition to that, families are having their cases stalled out. The system, the BCA, keeps the cases open, doesn't release the body cam footages, all of the things that the families need to have an accurate case to bring forward. A lot of the cases from the past, attorneys were not even given the chance or not even taking those kind of cases with police misconduct. So with all of that, we're asking that the statute of limitation for wrongful death get passed, and also the bill with the 24 to 48 hours. The families deserve to see what happened to their family. We deserve that for closure. And most of all, qualified immunity. Thank you.
You know, it's important to recognize, that these bills fit together. We need to end the statute of limitations. Minnesota has one of the shortest statute of limitations in the country, and because of the way that police investigations happen, they take entirely too long, and people do not get proper information that they can use to pursue legal remedies. And so we need to extend the statute of limitations. Really what we need to do is abolish it. And that kind of thing is very important. But qualified immunity fits with that, because as long as officers can pretend that a situation never ever occurred that was exactly the same as a situation that's being litigated, then they can hide behind qualified immunity. So we need both of those to fit together. At the same time, we also need that 48 hours. We need that bill that would require police agencies to provide video footage, the body camera footage, to these families within 48 hours, unredacted. Why? Because those families deserve to know what happened to their loved ones. They deserve that. You know, how can people's family member be just simply taken from them, vilified by the police? Because there's a pattern here. The person is killed, their entire record, even manufactured to vilify that person. They will go back and find that person's 4th grade math test that they flunked, if that's what it takes to vilify that person. I'll never forget, in the Isaac Aiden case, they said he had many brushes with the law. And when you looked at his record, every one of them was a parking ticket. Every one of them. That is not brushes with the law. That is an attempt to dirty up the person. So these things go on, and yet the families cannot have access to the body camera footage. This is nonsensical. We need all these things to happen. We need the bill that would require police officers to carry their own professional liability insurance to be accepted and to be passed. We needed all of these things. And the legislature made a dirty deal behind closed doors to fail the community. That's what they did. Thank you. Thank you.
Unfortunately, Representative Thompson, but fits us a quick question. Anybody from the Policy Caucus that you know of who will vote for the bill as presently agreed to?
You just walked away.
It's our understanding that at least some members of the Posse Caucus plan to vote no.
Yes. So I just wanted to touch base on your question. In the case of Dante Wright, the police department released the body cam footage within 24 hours. So that shows that they have the ability to release the body camera footage within a short period of time to the public. In the case of Dalad Eid, they released one body camera footage, and despite there being numerous amounts of body camera footage available, and they did it to spin a narrative that they wanted the public to see. And so the 48-hour bill, which allows the body camera footage to be viewed by the family so they can know what happened to their loved one. So when they have a legal representative that comes to the table, they can determine whether or not a case is justiciable under the law and bring a case forward. And then that followed by the statute of limitations on wrongful death, allowing the families to pursue an action. One of the most powerful tools that we have in the toolbox as lawyers is the discovery process, and that would provide answers to families about what happened to their loved one, and get those answers answered. So all these, and then after, if there's some type of award or some type of judgment, the qualified immunity piece would allow that judgment to stay. Right now, even if they got an award, the judgment can be thrown out because of qualified immunity. So all these bills were systematically designed to push back on the system and remove the barriers that police tend to run behind when they break the law, when they kill our community and violate civil rights of our citizens.
And I just want to add that the Posse Caucus will have a press conference at 12 o'clock.
Right here. Can somebody talk about the no-knock-warrant regulations in the bill? Just any thoughts on what ended up there?
Yes, we believe that, we wrote that bill. In fact, I wrote that bill. Unfortunately, it has been so watered down as to be meaningless. It was, the police said, oh, we can go along with that bill because why they had beat it down so badly that it is meaningless. We've actually instructed the Posse Caucus to trade out that bill for one of our better bills, because I'd like to just bring that bill back again in the future when it can be written more properly. As it sits now, the way that bill is written, it would not prevent anyone from dying as a result of a no-knock warrant. And so it's an unacceptable bill to us. I'd rather they just delete it and give us something else we actually want.
Remind me of what your preference would be. Is it just a complete ban on no-knock warrants?
Our preference would be a complete ban on no-knock warrants, except under extremely narrow circumstances. What this bill does is it puts up a few guardrails, meaning that some supervisor has to look at it and sign off on it. That's not really enough.
What is this question almost answers itself, but what is flawed about the idea of letting law enforcement decide the rules of law enforcement?
What is wrong about that? I'm retired from healthcare. I worked in healthcare for 40 years. There's a lot wrong with any profession deciding what rules they ought to live by. Yes, they know they have special knowledge that they can contribute to those rules, but because their actions affect the community has a lot to say about these rules as well. And it's ridiculous that law enforcement continues to hold sway here at the legislature. Given their conduct over the past few years at least, they have really lost the authority to be the decision makers around how law enforcement gets conducted. We are the subjects of their activity. We are the people who should have the right to decide what law enforcement looks like.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
David, are you a little clergy now?
Yeah, I'll probably stay here.
Yeah.
Are they going to do a hearing?
I haven't seen the press release yet.
I'm checking to see.
Somebody's on the spare thing.
I'm checking to see.
You know,
At the top of it.